love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack 2022 Fantasy Football Team Previews. We're going to be covering the Indianapolis Colts. With me doing that is Mr. Dave Eddy. Let's just jump right into things, shall we? So let's jump into our quarterbacks. And the Colts have a new man under center once again. It is Mr. Matt Ryan coming over from the Atlanta Falcons. He's sitting right now in an overall ranking over on Fantasy Pros of 182 and quarterback 25. And Mr. Sam Ehlinger is his backup. Nothing to write home about there. But Matt Ryan's kind of teetered with QB1, high QB2 value for quite some time over there in Atlanta. Can he be that for you in Indy, you think, this year?
Nope, he sure can't. To be quite fair, yeah, right. I mean, to be quite fair, as much as I like the Colts as a team, I don't think that he's got the same weapons that he's had, historically in Atlanta. And I like Michael Pittman, and that's about it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, they're gonna pound the rock. They're gonna run the ball like crazy. He's going to become, I think, a game manager. And I think that he'll be fine in that role, but that doesn't help us in fantasy purposes. So, I mean, he's definitely not a QB1. I think you could be happy with a lot of things as your QB2. So, I mean, if you want to give me Matt Ryan as a QB2, I guess I won't throw a fit about it, but I think I would be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's, I mean, look, he doesn't have Julio Jones in his prime, Calvin Ridley when he was balling out, right?
Yeah,
Kyle Pitts is good.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, I mean, Patterson was a moneymaker for him last year, dude. It was, it's a different game over in Indy. They are a heavy run-first offense. I mean, we're looking at Matt Ryan throwing, how many times? He threw consistently throwing 500-600 times a year, right? And the Colts, with Carson Wentz last year, threw, where is his attempts? The bottom end, like 516 to where Matt Ryan was at like 560, and that was actually low for Matt Ryan last year.
Right.
He's usually in the 600s. So I mean, we're talking about 100 less attempts overall in the entire season in that type of offense. Now, maybe Matt Ryan changes things slightly because I do think he's a better passer than Wentz. So maybe they can rely on the passing game a little more, but yeah, I'm not really digging Matt Ryan as a quarterback that I'm wanting to take as a QB1. 2 QB leagues, different story. I'm fine with it. I'm sure he'll get, he'll have some nice games, but yeah, nothing too exciting there. So moving over here to running backs, and we've got Mr. Jonathan Taylor, the overall number 1 pick right now over there on Fantasy Pros. Nyheim Hines, Philip Lindsay, new man in town just recently, and then rounded things out, Deion Jackson. So couple things here. So I mean, Taylor, like, you're in on the number 1 pick, right, with him in your.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that I wouldn't say you don't have a choice, but I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus. Like, barring injury, which you can't predict, I think he's as safe as it's going to get,
Yeah, I 100% agree. Now, interestingly enough, right, so Nyheim Hines still kind of carved out a pretty nice role last year, and we're reading reports just today, actually, that Frank Reich used him to death in like first OTAs today, and it's just going like, I would draft him in fantasy. I mean, is this just like helium at its best at this point, or are we like maybe we should move him up a little bit?
Well, I mean, what do you expect him to say? Like, I mean,
I have no idea.
Like
But
he's not going to say anything else. I don't know what context that came in. I don't know what the question was. I mean, Hines is interesting. I mean, he definitely in a full PPR format is going to be valuable because he's going to get catches.
Let me ask you though. So he played all 17 games last year, right?
Yeah.
How many catches do you actually think he had? And if you're looking it up,
I'm looking at it. I know that he has 40 catches on 57 targets.
That's actually lower than I thought it would have been.
Well, I mean, it's funny because he's had 2 seasons of 63 catches.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, if you look at his targets, it seems like he started out the season like, I don't want to say hot, but he started out the season getting more usage, and then he kind of went away, and then he came back a little bit, and then he went away, and he just was kind of back and forth. I mean, if you're drafting him for anything more than, I don't know, maybe a flex. I don't know what you're thinking. He's not an RB2. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor gets hurt, then that's extraordinarily interesting. But
would he be the guy? I don't think Hines would change his role. I think that helps Phillip Lindsay.
I don't know.
I think Phillip Lindsay becomes the running back who starts, and Hines might start, but I think Phillip Lindsay gets a lot more workload. Where like Hines has his role. This is his role, right? He's not a between the numbers type of guy. Like he's not doing that.
No, but I think he would get more work because I mean Jonathan Taylor catches passes too, so I think there's just more work for Hines. I think that Lindsay's value overall takes a bigger bump, but either way, I mean Jonathan Taylor, we're not planning on him getting hurt, so it's kind of irrelevant. But no, exactly. I wouldn't say that his coach saying he would draft him in fantasy should move the needle at all. If his coach said, "Yeah, I wouldn't touch this guy in fantasy," now that changes my perspective. But again, what else is he going to say?
That's very true.
No, I think that's just an off-season quote that you can just stash and forget about.
But we got to talk about something, man. It's only May.
Well, let's talk about Michael Pittman.
Michael Pittman leads the receivers here. Overall 34, receiver 13. Alec Pierce, drafted from Cincinnati, 241 and 85. Paris Campbell coming off injury. And then Ashton Doolin, Mike Strachan, and Kiki Kuti. Probably one of the more fun names to say. Yeah. But, I mean, this is about Pittman, right? I mean, he's the only real rosterable player out of this receiving core. I mean, do you think he could live up to a overall 34 wide receiver 13 ranking right now?
I'm gonna say probably not. And again, Michael Pittman is another guy that I can use DFS to reference because he would be a guy that, again, is boom or bust. He's a guy that you can look for to have a huge day, and it seems like you're gonna he's gonna be one or the other. He's either gonna get you a huge day, or again, they don't have a whole bunch of they don't have a whole bunch of other people here, so they can target Michael Pittman and say, you know what, you're going to have to beat us with somebody else in the passing game, which they might not have to because they might just pound the ball with Jonathan Taylor, get a lead. They have a great defense. Taylor gets 30 carries, and Pittman just becomes obsolete just by default, not even to any fault of his or the defense's. So he's very talented, and I'm not saying don't draft him. I don't think I would draft him where he currently sits. He's not a guy in this range that I'm going to be owning, unfortunately. And I like the guy too, so it's just one of those situations, you know.
I 100% agree with you. I'm not drafting him at that price. It's funny. We just got done recording the Texans, and I'm looking at his stats. This is Brandon Cooks 2.0, man. Like this is exactly it. I mean, Brandon Cooks was like 132 targets, 129 targets for Pittman, 1,000+ yards for both, 6 touchdowns for both. Now, the one thing you can say for Pittman, right, is he's got a much better quarterback. So maybe I think that's where the price got raised for him. And he's a younger player, so everybody wants to get excited about the younger players getting better, right? And Brandon Cooks is just a guy now. Like, whatever. But yeah, I think he probably belongs a little lower than this. And none of the rest of these guys are really moving the needle for me. So moving on here to finish up with the tight ends. And, Indy has been known to use the tight ends pretty often, but this room doesn't really do it for me, to be honest with you. Mo Alley Cox leads the way. Overall 277, tight end 33, then Jelani Woods. And yeah, whatever. No Jack Doyle, no Trey Burton. I mean, is this finally the year that Mo Alley Cox is going to do something and be more consistent at least?
I mean, he's at least got the opportunity because, as we talked about with the wide receivers, it's Michael Pittman. So theoretically, I could see Mo Alley Cox being the quote unquote, wide receiver too, almost like a Gesicki in Miami, where he's more of a wide receiver. I mean, different players, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
I think that the volume could be there. I'm not a huge fan. I think. Like I talked about with the Texans, once you get outside of, the top 5-8 tight ends, they're all touchdown dependent. And so that's exactly what you have at Mo Alley Cox. I mean, his high last season for targets was 5.
Right.
I mean, that was like his peak. Like that's not
there was that week 4 through 7, man, like he scored touchdowns those weeks, right? And so everybody was like, "Oh, all right, that's fine. I'll use Mo Alley Cox," and then he disappears the rest of the entire season. This is like, oh, never mind. He's Mo Alley Cox still. So yeah,
I like him more than I like his. I think he's better than the tight end 33. Like, there's not 32 tight ends I would take over him, but he's not going to be a tight end 1 for me. He's going to be a backup piece that I'm using on a bye week or. God forbid you got Kelsey and, you have to use Cox if he gets hurt, but he's not a guy I'm targeting by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely not. So, all right, well, that's it for the Indianapolis Colts fantasy football team preview. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button, leave those comments. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Tune in to the next one. See you.